This is the day the Lord hath made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it.
Our first reading will be Psalm number 1. Blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, or the stand of the way of sinners, or sit in the seat of mockers. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. He is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in season, and whose leaf does not wither. Whatever he does prospers. Not so the wicked, they are like chaff that the wind blows away. Therefore the wicked will not stand in judgment, nor sinners in the assembly of the righteous. For the Lord watches over the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked will perish. Second reading is Jeremiah chapter 31, verses 31 through 34. The time is coming, declares the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. It will not be like the covenant I made with their forefathers when I took them by the hand to lead them out of Egypt, because they broke my covenant, though I was a husband to them, declares the Lord. This is the covenant I will make with the house of Israel. After that time, declares the Lord, I will put my law in their minds and write it on their hearts. I will be their God. They will be my people. No longer will a man teach his neighbor or a man his brother, saying, Know the Lord, because they will all know me, from the least of them to the greatest, declares the Lord. For I will forgive their wickedness, and I will remember their sins no more. Thus ends our reading.
So 250 years ago, a group of men got together and put words on a piece of paper. Actually, it was Thomas Jefferson who wrote the Declaration of Independence, but by the time they were done in the Continental Congress, making additions, taking out certain lines that some of the colonies found offensive, especially those to do with slavery, were removed at the insistence of the southern colonies. And by the time they got to the end of it, it hardly resembled his original doctrine or his original paper. One thing that a lot of people are not aware of, you may be, because I think I've mentioned this before, but when Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence, he did not say anything about the intervention of God. For the simple reason that Thomas Jefferson, while he did believe in God, he was of a group of people called deists. These are people that believe that God created the heavens and the earth and then went back into the heavens, and having gone back into the heavens, did not intercede in matters here on earth. Therefore, Jefferson didn't put anything in about relying on the help of God, because he did not think that help would be forthcoming. He envisioned the Revolutionary War to be won by force of arms only, and not by assistance from God. It was left to the Reverend Jonathan Witherspoon, a Congregationalist minister, as most of the northern colonies were Congregationalist, forerunners of the United Church of Christ. It was Reverend Jonathan Witherspoon that insisted that the words, with the firm reliance upon the help of God. This was added at the very bottom of the Declaration and voted on by the colonies. Some debated. There was quite a bit of deism in those days, both in the North and in the South. And by the way, I would, drawing on our Congregationalist roots, of all of the delegates that came from the northern colonies, only 2 of those delegates were not Congregationalists, while all of those coming from the South, only 1 from Maryland, he was a Roman Catholic, but the rest of them were Church of England. And we don't think about that these days. We do not think of where religion came into this question of freedom and declaring independence from the king. Of course, in the Anglican faith or Church of England, the king is the head of the church. And therefore, it was more difficult for the southern delegates to make that separation. The king, after all, was the one who was the patron saint, so to speak, of the Anglican Church. It was the king that was included in all of their prayers, and it was a difficult choice. For those in the northern colonies who were Congregationalists, resolved that they were their own people under God only, it was an easier jump. So if you've ever wondered how religion might have entered into the Declaration, that is it in a nutshell. But the Declaration of Independence went on to be the basis of our union, not so much the Constitution, which would come much later, but it was the Declaration of Independence that all colonies had signed that held them together through the difficult period of what was called the Articles of Federation before our Constitution was made. That liberty and justice for all, and that idea that they expressed came into severe trial at the time of the Civil War. The song that Cody and I played this morning, American Trilogy, is a representative of the Civil War because you, of course, recognize it starting with Dixie, the Song of the South, the de facto national anthem of the South, and it ended with the Battle Hymn of the Republic. But in between that quiet piece that was only a brief snippet of the song was All My Trials, Lord, Soon Be Over. And it was a song of the Southern slaves. And thus the song American Trilogy represented the three factions of the war, the North, the South, and the slave population. After that Civil War was ended, with over 700,000 young men and a few women dead in that conflict, one of the Union officers that survived, and I'm sorry I don't have his name. I took a wonderful set of notes for this sermon, and then I forgot to print them out. But around 1870, I believe it was, he came to believe that part of the problem that caused the war was that the children of the schools, and especially in the South, had not been taught anything expressing their commitment to the nation. And he wrote down a bare 2 lines, which came to be called the Pledge of Allegiance. It was designed to be said before school every day, facing the flag with hand over heart. And it basically said, I pledge allegiance to the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands. Period. 2 lines. That poem, as some have called it, went through 4 revisions through the years. It seemed like it was revised in times of great trial. It was revised just prior to the Second World War, when some words were changed. But the major revision did not come until 1954, and strangely enough, it was left to the American Congress. The 83rd Congress of the United States inserted 2 words that made all the difference in the Pledge of Allegiance. Under God. Isn't it strange that that change would come from a Congress that we so much as identify with the idea of the separation, the misguided idea of separation of church and state, because the original Constitution did not separate the church and state as saying there can be no religion in the state, but rather that the state cannot designate a religion. There shall be no state religion, such as there was in England. But isn't it odd that in all the revisions of the pledge, God was never mentioned until we were in the throes of the Cold War? And we had the Red Scare and the Yellow Scare and all of those nuclear Cuba thing where we were terrified. And hiding under our beds from the nuclear bombs, being taught in school how to crouch down and cover your eyes under a desk, which for convenience sake was so that all the bodies would be in the same position. Because as we know from Hiroshima, nothing survives an atomic bomb, not even a school desk. But it would come in 1954, one nation under God from the Congress. But they have left us with a dilemma, and it's a dilemma of punctuation. We have been taught to say that prayer as we did this morning, or that poem, or whatever we want to call it, or that pledge, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I suspect it was broken up into small phrases to make it easier for school children to memorize. We've done the same thing with the Lord's Prayer in many respects. I'm very proud that you have accepted my change in that prayer, where we don't pause at the points we normally did, but carry them over into a completed thought. And the question is, with the punctuation of those words under God, or the lack of it, the entire import and meaning of that changes. For you see, at that time, we still accepted that we were down here and God was up there, up in heaven, above all. And so, if we're one nation, pause, under God, pause, that simply means that we're here on the ground and God is up there watching over us. Think about it. It makes a big difference. We now have come to accept that God is, as the Lutherans would say, over us, under us, around us, and in us. But if you change the punctuation, if you don't pause for poetic reasons or a gulp of breath, and you read that phrase differently, then it becomes one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And it changes the meaning so much. We are no longer just located under God, but now as a nation under God, indivisible. We are a nation under the control and hand of God. We are a nation to be guided by God, not just to pray to a God that's up above us and we under him, but a nation that takes our direction from God. We've forgotten that. Oh, have we forgotten that? And I'm going to become a little bit political here. But don't worry, because I'm an equal opportunity abuser, and I'm going to address both parties right now. Because we have forgotten that the whole purpose of the Congress is not to lobby so that you can have another term, not to lobby so that the balance of Congress will be this or that, not to have a Congress that is red or blue, but have a Congress that is red, white, and blue. You get the difference? Do you see the difference? We are one nation under God, indivisible, and yet we seek on a daily basis to divide the nation. We have tried to divide God out of the nation. We did, at one time, divide liberty, as this nation insisted with slavery still in its midst. And now we're trying to divide God out of our Congress. We're trying to divide democracy and unity to a point where if either party was able to find a way to freely give every citizen of this country $1 million, the other party would oppose it, simply because they would not allow the opposite party to do anything good, which might show up at election time. It's got to stop, because we are a nation under God, and God does not agree to this kind of division. We will continue to have political differences between us. The two-party system is necessary, just as the system of checks and balances that was instituted in the Constitution is necessary. There must always be two views on any topic, and we must always welcome them, but not fight them simply because it was someone else who suggested the idea, but rather try to see the sense of everything. Rather try to see what would God have us do for this nation, not what would God have us do for each other, not what God would have us do for the betterment of each other's party, but each other as people and citizens of a red, white, and blue nation. Do we have to come to the point where a third party must step in to right the wrongs and get us back on track? Then we will really have chaos. You think it's bad now, and it is. It'll be even worse then. Unity is what we were grounded on. Ben Franklin said it best when he said we must all stand together or hang individually. Because if the colonies had not stuck together, that is surely what would have happened to the leaders, to those men of courage who put on paper their names that they expected to be sent directly to King George III, and it was. The Declaration was a letter, and it was sent to the king, and the king read it. John Hancock's name was big in the center. And by the way, does anyone know the real reason his name was so large? Okay, he later said it was so German George could read it without his glasses. But the truth of the matter is that John Hancock was the first to sign as the president of the Continental Congress. And therefore, it was natural for him to sign in the middle and proportionate to the size of the document. Therefore, his is the largest signature. But we can accept the Apocrypha and say it was for German Georgie to read without his glasses. Unity was what those men envisioned. They knew that this country could not survive without the unity. And it is a shame that we remember that only on the 4th of July, that we only celebrate our unity once a year, especially when our unity comes from God, for we are one nation, under God indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We are red, white, and blue. Praise the Lord for that. Amen. Well, may the road rise to meet you and the wind be ever at your back. May the sun shine warm on your face, the rain fall gently on our fields, please. And until we meet again, may God hold us all in the palm of God's hands, and may we truly live in a united nation, red, white, and blue. I'm sure we're all old enough to remember Tate Smith. Thank you, Cody. Thank you. You've now been promoted to lieutenant.